The morning rain drummed against the windows of Sunnyside Cafe as Sophia Bennett wiped down tables for the third time that hour. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and coffee stains decorated her yellow apron like badges of exhaustion. At 24, she had the tired eyes of someone carrying burdens far beyond her years. Her phone buzzed with another reminder about her mother's medical bills. The cancer treatments were draining every penny she earned from her 2 jobs. As a waitress during the day and cleaning offices at night barely kept them afloat. But Sophia refused to give up hope. "Table 7 needs their check," called Marcus, the grumpy manager who seemed to enjoy making her life difficult. Sophia forced a smile and grabbed the receipt pad. Weaving through the crowded cafe toward the businessman in the expensive suit. As she approached his table, movement outside the window caught her attention. 2 men in black suits were dragging something heavy toward a black van parked in the alley behind the cafe. Her blood ran cold when she realized that something was actually someone. A man in bloodied clothes who wasn't moving. The businessman at table 7 was still waiting. But Sophia's hands trembled as she watched one of the men pull out a gun and check the body. Her gasp was loud enough to draw attention from nearby customers. "Miss, could I get my check, please?" the businessman asked impatiently. Sophia tried to act normal, but her eyes kept darting to the window. The men were looking around now, scanning the area for witnesses. One of them pointed directly at the cafe window where she stood frozen. Their eyes met through the glass. Panic flooded her system like ice water. The man nudged his partner, and both started walking toward the cafe entrance. Sophia dropped the receipt pad and backed away from the window. "I need to take my break," she called to Marcus, not waiting for permission as she untied her apron and rushed toward the back exit. The alley was empty now, except for a dark stain on the concrete where the body had been. Sophia's heart pounded. As she ran toward the main street, her sneakers splashing through puddles. She could hear heavy footsteps behind her, getting closer. The Grand Plaza Hotel loomed ahead, its golden entrance promising safety among crowds of wealthy guests. She burst through the revolving doors, her uniform marking her as clearly out of place among the designer suits and evening gowns. She didn't slow down until she crashed directly into someone coming out of the hotel bar. The impact sent them both stumbling. But strong arms caught her before she could fall. "I'm so sorry," she gasped, looking up into the most incredible blue eyes she'd ever seen. The man was tall, with dark hair, perfectly styled despite the early hour. His charcoal suit probably cost more than her monthly rent, and his watch caught the lobby lights like captured starlight. He was devastatingly handsome in a way that made her forget how to breathe properly. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice smooth and concerned as he steadied her. Behind them, Sophia spotted the 2 men from the alley pushing through the revolving doors. They were scanning the lobby with predatory focus. Desperation made her bold. "You're my husband," she blurted out, grabbing the stranger's arm. His eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me, please," she whispered urgently, seeing the men getting closer. "Just play along. I'm in trouble." Something in her terrified expression must have convinced him, because he immediately wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her. "Close, darling," he said loudly enough for half the lobby to hear. "There you are. I was wondering where you'd gone." The 2 men stopped their search when they saw her wrapped in the arms of an obviously wealthy stranger. They exchanged glances and backed off, presumably unwilling to cause a scene in such an upscale venue. "Thank you." Sophia breathed against his chest, inhaling the expensive cologne that made her head spin. "Don't thank me yet," he murmured into her hair. "I think we're both in more trouble than you realize." She looked up at him, confused, but he was watching something over her shoulder. Following his gaze, she saw 3 different men in suits had entered the lobby and were also scanning for someone. "Friends of yours?" she asked weakly. "Not exactly. I'm Lucas Hamilton, by the way." His smile was grim, but somehow still charming. "And you just became my wife at a very interesting time, Sophia Bennett." "And what do you mean interesting?" Lucas guided her toward the elevator bank, moving with casual confidence despite the obvious danger. "Mrs. Hamilton, it seems we're both being hunted by people who don't like to take no for an answer." The elevator arrived with a soft ding, and Lucas ushered her inside. As the doors closed, Sophia caught a glimpse of both groups of men converging in the lobby, looking frustrated and confused. "I don't understand," she said, as they rose toward the upper floors. "Who are those men? Some of them work for Vincent Cross, a man who doesn't appreciate being told he can't buy whatever he wants." Lucas's jaw tightened, including my company and apparently my life. "Your company? Hamilton Technologies?" "We develop software for financial markets." He looked at her with those incredible blue eyes. 3 days ago, I discovered my business partner sold us out to Cross without my knowledge. When I tried to back out of the deal, things got violent. The elevator stopped at the penthouse level. The men following me are probably Cross's people. 2. He doesn't like loose ends. Lucas led her down a hallway lined with expensive art. "What did you see, Sophia?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I think I witnessed a murder." Lucas stopped walking and turned to face her completely. "Then, we're both definitely in serious trouble." He used a keycard to open a door marked Presidential Suite. The room beyond was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and furniture that belonged in a magazine spread. "You're staying here?" she asked, looking around the opulent space. "I own the hotel." His casual admission made her feel dizzy. "It's one of many investments. Not exactly the romantic getaway I'd planned for my fake honeymoon." Sophia sank onto a cream-colored sofa that was softer than her entire bed at home. "This is insane. This morning, I was worried about affording groceries. Now, murderers while pretending to be married to someone who owns hotels?" Lucas poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter and offered her one. She shook her head, needing to stay sharp. "Tell me exactly what you saw," he said gently, sitting across from her. She described the scene outside the cafe, the blood, the way the men had looked right at her through the window. Lucas's expression grew darker with each detail. Cross is eliminating witnesses to cover his tracks. That body was probably someone who got too close to discovering his real business operations. He set down his glass with deliberate care. "He won't stop looking for you, Sophia. And now that you've been seen with me, you're connected to both problems. What are we going to do? We're going to disappear." Lucas's smile returned, but there was steel behind it. "I have resources, safe houses, people who owe me favors, but it means leaving your old life behind, at least temporarily." Yes. Sophia thought about her tiny apartment, her demanding jobs, the mountain of bills waiting on her kitchen table. Then she thought about her mother in the hospital, depending on her. "I can't just vanish. My mother needs her treatments, and I have responsibilities." "I'll take care of your mother's medical expenses," Lucas said without hesitation. "The best doctors, private rooms, whatever she needs." "I can't let you do that. We barely know each other. You saved my life today by providing the perfect cover. Let me save yours in return." He moved to sit beside her on the sofa. "Besides, I'm starting to think this fake marriage might be the best thing that's ever happened to me." There was something in his voice that made her look at him more carefully. Despite the danger and the insanity of their situation, there was genuine warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. "You're serious about all this?" Sophia asked. "Deadly serious. Cross won't give up, and neither will I. I know this is crazy, but I have a feeling we make a pretty good team, Mrs. Hamilton." The way he said her, fake married names sent unexpected butterflies dancing through her stomach. This morning she'd been invisible, struggling alone. Now she was sitting in a penthouse suite with a man who looked at her like she was the most important person in his world. "So what happens now, Mr. Hamilton?" "Now we pack light and disappear into the shadows for a while." But before Lucas could elaborate, his phone rang. The caller ID made his face go pale. "Cross," he said grimly, showing her the screen. "He's calling me directly. Don't answer it." "I have to. If I don't, he'll know we're running." Lucas's thumb hovered over the accept button. "Stay quiet," he answered on speaker. Vincent Cross's voice filled the room like poisonous smoke. "Lucas, my boy, I hear you've been making new friends today. Charming young lady in a cafe uniform, I'm told." Sophia's blood turned to ice. They'd been watching. I don't know what. "You're talking about Vincent?" Cross chuckled. "The Grand Plaza Hotel has excellent security cameras. Your new bride is quite lovely." It would be a shame if something happened to her because of your stubbornness. Lucas's jaw clenched. Leave her out of this. Sign over the company, Lucas. All of it. The patents, the client list, everything. Do that, and perhaps your wife can continue enjoying her newfound wealth? And if I refuse? Well, let's just say accidents happen. Even to people hiding in penthouse suites. The line went dead. Sophia stared at Lucas in horror. He knows we're here. We need to move now. Lucas was already pulling out a black duffel bag from a hidden compartment. There's a service elevator. That leads directly to the parking garage. I keep a car there for emergencies. Lucas, wait. Sophia grabbed his arm. Can't sacrifice your life's work for me. We barely know each other. Stop packing and turn to face her fully. 3 years ago, Cross tried to buy my company. When I refused, he had my younger sister kidnapped. She was held for 6 days before I managed to get her back. His voice was raw with old pain. I swore I'd never let him use someone I cared about as leverage again. Someone you cared about. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Lucas moved closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. Sophia, I know this sounds insane, but from the moment you crashed into me, something changed. Maybe it's the adrenaline, maybe it's fate, but I feel more alive with you than I have in years. Before she could respond, the lights in the suite suddenly went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Sophia could see men in tactical gear rappelling down the side of the building. The service elevator, Lucas said urgently, grabbing her hand. They ran through the darkened suite, but as they reached the hallway, the elevator doors opened to reveal 2 armed men in Cross's employ. Going somewhere, Mr. Hamilton? Oh, one of them asked with a cruel smile. Lucas stepped protectively in front of Sophia. Let her go. This is between Cross and me. I'm afraid it doesn't work that way anymore. The sound of shattering glass came from behind them as the tactical team breached the suite windows. They were trapped between 2 groups of armed men with nowhere to run. Here's what's going to happen, the first gunman continued. You're both coming with us. Mr. Cross has a proposition that I think you'll find very motivating. Lucas's hand found Sophia's behind his back, squeezing once. She realized he was trying to tell her something, but before she could figure out what, he suddenly lunged forward, tackling the nearest gunman. Run, he shouted, as they grappled for the weapon. But Sophia couldn't leave him. Instead, she grabbed a heavy crystal vase from a nearby table and brought it down hard on the second gunman's head. He crumpled to the floor. Lucas had managed to disarm his opponent, but more men were pouring out of the elevator. This way, he said, pulling her toward a door she hadn't noticed before. It led to a narrow maintenance stairwell. They could hear shouting and footsteps echoing behind them as they raced down the concrete steps, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. Where does this lead? Sophia gasped. Sub-basement. There's a tunnel that connects to the building. Next door, it was built during Prohibition. They burst through a heavy door into a dank underground passage lit by flickering fluorescent lights. The air smelled of dampness and decades of neglect. Lucas, Sophia said as they hurried through. The tunnel, I need you to know something. If we don't make it out of this, I'm glad it was with you. He stopped suddenly and turned to face her, his eyes intense in the harsh lighting. We're going to make it, he said fiercely. And when we do, I'm going to show you exactly how much. You mean to me? Then he kissed her, hard and desperate, against the cold brick wall of the tunnel. For a moment the danger faded away, and there was only the taste of him and the wild beating of her heart. The tunnel led them to the basement of an old office building 3 blocks away. Lucas had a key to a service exit that brought them out into an alley, behind a row of shops. Rain was still falling, turning the narrow space into a maze of shadows and reflected light. There's a safe house uptown, Lucas said, pulling out his phone to call for a car. We can regroup there and figure out our next move. But when he looked at his screen, his expression darkened. Sophia, when you witnessed that murder this morning, did you see the victim's face clearly? Not really. Why? He showed her a news alert on his phone. Because according to this, the body found in that alley was my business partner, David Chen, the one who supposedly sold me out to Cross. Sophia felt the world tilt around her. That's impossible. You said he betrayed you? That's what Cross told me. But if David's dead, then someone else has been feeding Cross information about my company. Lucas's voice was grim. Someone I trusted. A black sedan pulled up to the mouth of the alley, and Lucas tensed, reaching for the gun he'd taken from the hotel. But instead of Cross's men, a woman stepped out.
Ow!
She was tall and elegant, with silver hair pulled back in a perfect chignon. Despite the late hour and dangerous circumstances, she looked like she'd stepped out of a boardroom meeting. "Hello, Lucas," she said calmly. "Alina?" Lucas's voice was flat. "I should have known." Sophia looked between them, confused. "Who is?" "She, my business partner Lucas," said bitterly. "David's wife. And apparently the person who's been working with Cross all along." Alina smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "David was getting cold feet about the deal. He wanted to warn you. Cross couldn't allow that, so you had him killed. I had a problem solved." Lena's voice was matter-of-fact. "David was weak. He would have ruined everything out of some misguided sense of loyalty to you." Sophia stepped closer to Lucas, her hand finding his arm. She could feel the tension radiating from him like heat. "The company was worth $50 million, Alina continued. "Cross was offering us $100 million to deliver it to him, plus your client list and proprietary algorithms. David's conscience wasn't worth walking away from that kind of money. And now?" Lucas asked. "Now the offer stands. Sign everything over to Cross, and you and your charming new wife can disappear. Refuse, and well, there have already been 2 unfortunate accidents today. 2. Alina's smile widened. "Your mother-in-law's medical equipment suffered a rather unfortunate malfunction about an hour ago. Nothing fatal, of course. Just a warning." Sophia's world exploded into white-hot rage. "You monster. She's dying, and you're using her as leverage." "I'm using whatever tools are necessary to close this deal." Before anyone could react, Sophia launched herself at Alina, fury overriding any sense of self-preservation. They crashed to the wet pavement, Sophia's hands going for the other woman's throat. "Sophia, no." Lucas pulled her off Alina, but not before she'd managed to land several solid hits. Alina stood up, her perfect composure finally cracked. Blood trickled from her nose and her hair was disheveled. "You have until midnight to sign the papers," she snarled.
After that,
Cross stops being patient. She got back in her car and drove away, leaving Lucas and Sophia alone in the rain-soaked alley. "My mother," Sophia whispered, the fight going out of her as quickly as it had come. "I have to get to the hospital." "It's a trap," Lucas said gently. "They're counting on you going there." "I don't care. She's all I have left." Lucas pulled her close, his voice fierce against her ear. "She's not all you have. Not anymore." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Marcus, it's Lucas Hamilton. I need a medical team at St. Mary's Hospital immediately. I see you, cancer ward. Full security detail." He paused, listening. "Yes, I'll pay whatever it takes." When he hung up, Sophia was staring at him in amazement. "Marcus Rodriguez," he explained. "He runs the city's best private security firm. I've used him before when Cross got too aggressive. He'll have your mother protected and moved to a secure medical facility within the hour." "Why are you doing all this for me?" Lucas cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing away the tears she didn't realize she'd been crying. "Because somewhere between this morning and tonight, I fell completely in love with you," he said simply. "And I'll be damned if I let Cross or Alina or anyone else hurt the people I love." The words hung between them in the misty air, more powerful than any declaration Sophia had ever heard. "Lucas," she began, but he shook his head. "You don't have to say anything? I know this is crazy and fast, and probably the worst possible timing, but I needed you to know." Instead of words, Sophia answered by pulling his head down to hers and kissing him with all the desperation and hope and love she'd been holding back. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "So what's the plan?" she asked. Lucas's smile was sharp and dangerous. "We're going to give Alina and Cross exactly what they think they want, and then we're going to destroy them both." The meeting was set for midnight at Cross's private club, an exclusive establishment in the financial district where deals worth millions were made overaged. Whiskey and handshake agreements. Lucas had insisted on bringing Sophia, claiming that, as his wife, she had a right to be present for the signing. Cross had agreed, probably thinking that having her there would give him additional leverage over Lucas. He was wrong. As they walked through the club's mahogany-paneled corridors, Sophia's hand was steady in Lucas's. They'd spent the last 4 hours preparing, and she understood her role perfectly. "Remember?" Lucas murmured as they approached the private dining room. "Everything we've discussed depends on timing." "I trust you," she replied, and meant it completely. Cross was waiting for them at a long table, Alina beside him looking perfectly composed despite their earlier encounter. Several other men in expensive suits filled out the rest of the seats, all of them radiating the kind of quiet menace that came with serious money and fewer scruples. "Lucas," Cross said, standing to greet them. "The lovely Mrs. Hamilton. So good of you both to come." Let's get this over with," Lucas replied curtly, pulling out a chair for Sophia. The papers were already laid out on the table. Transfer. Documents that would sign over every aspect of Hamilton Technologies to Cross's shell corporations. Alina had a pen ready, her smile triumphant. "Before we begin," Lucas said, "I have one condition." Cross raised an eyebrow. "You're hardly in a position to make demands. I want a full confession. I want to know exactly how David died and why, and I want Alina to admit her role in all of this." Lucas's voice was calm, reasonable. "Call it closure, Lucas." "Don't," Alina said quickly. "Just sign the papers and walk away." But Cross was intrigued. "You want the whole sordid story?" "Very well." He leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying himself. "Alina came to me 6 months ago with a proposition. She'd been skimming money from your company's accounts, needed a way to cover her tracks before David discovered what she'd been doing." Sophia felt Lucas tense beside her, but his expression remained neutral. "The solution was elegant," Cross continued. "Sell me the company, and Elena's embezzlement would disappear in the paperwork. David would be rich enough not to care about a few missing millions, but David found out," Lucas said. "David found out," Alina confirmed, her voice bitter. "Threatened to expose everything. Said he'd rather see us all go to prison than let you be betrayed." She laughed harshly. "Noble fool. So you had him killed." "I had a problem solved," she repeated. "Cross's people made it look like a random mugging gone wrong. It would have worked perfectly if your little waitress hadn't been in the wrong place at the wrong time." Cross nodded approvingly. "Lena has been most helpful, much more practical than her late husband." "And my mother's medical equipment?" Sophia asked quietly. "A simple hack," one of Cross's men said proudly. "Hospital security is laughably weak. We could have done much worse." Lucas reached for the pen. "I want it in writing. A full confession, signed by everyone involved. Then I'll sign your papers." "Lucas, no," Sophia whispered, playing her part perfectly. But Cross was already nodding to one of his men, who began typing on a laptop. "Why not? You'll both be dead. Within the hour anyway. I can't have loose ends walking around with this kind of information." The confession was printed and passed around the table. Each of Cross's associates signed it, acknowledging their roles in David's murder, the hospital attack, and the systematic theft of Hamilton Technologies. Lena hesitated, but Cross's cold stare convinced her to add her signature. "There," Cross said, sliding the document across to Lucas. Satisfied. Lucas picked up the confession and handed it to Sophia. She folded it carefully and slipped it into her purse. Then she pulled out her phone and stopped the recording app that had been running since they'd entered the room. "The hell is that?" Alina demanded. "Insurance?" Sophia said calmly. "That entire conversation, including your confessions, has been streaming live to the FBI field office downtown. Agent Sarah Chen is David's sister, and she's been building a case against Cross for months. She just needed proof." Cross's face went white, then purple with rage. "You scheming little bitch." His men were already reaching for their weapons, but Lucas was faster. The fire alarm he'd triggered sent sprinklers cascading down from the ceiling, and in the chaos of rushing water and shouting voices, he grabbed Sophia's hand and pulled her toward the emergency exit. They could hear Cross screaming orders behind them as they raced down the fire stairs, but the building was already surrounded. FBI agents were flooding in through every entrance, their raid coordinated to the minute. By the time Lucas and Sophia reached the street, Cross and his entire organization were in custody. "Agent Chen," Lucas said, greeting a serious-looking woman in an FBI windbreaker. "Thank you for your help." "Thank you for giving us what we needed to finally nail Cross," she replied. David would have been proud. Lena was led past them in handcuffs, her perfect composure finally shattered. She looked at Sophia with pure hatred. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Sophia replied calmly. "It's over." 3 months later, Sophia stood in the garden of Lucas's estate upstate, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Her mother was inside, recovering beautifully in the private medical suite Lucas had built for her. The cancer was in remission, and for the first time in years, Sophia felt like she could breathe freely. "Mrs. Hamilton," Lucas said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "How does it feel to be legally married now?" They'd made it official 2 weeks ago, a small ceremony with just Sophia's mother and a few close friends. Nothing like the fake marriage that had started in that hotel lobby, but infinitely more meaningful. "It feels like coming home," she said, leaning back against his chest. "Good," he murmured against her hair, "'cause I have a confession to make." "Oh, I've been in love with you since the moment you crashed into me. Not because of the adrenaline, or the danger or any of that. Just because of who you are." Sophia turned in his arms, her heart full to bursting. "Lucky for you, I fell in love with my fake husband too." "Lucky for both of us," Lucas agreed, and kissed her as the sun rose. On their new life together, the end.